You ever been in one of those big strategy meetings? You see these brilliant, detailed scenarios for the future, and then you watch your entire organization get completely blindsided when that future actually shows up? It's common, and man, is it frustrating. Okay, let's dive into why this keeps happening, and more importantly, what we can do to fix it.
This quote right here, it just gets to the absolute heart of the problem, doesn't it? We spend all this time and energy, all these resources picturing what's coming around the bend, but it almost never changes how we operate today. So the big question is, how do we bridge that massive gap between seeing what's coming and actually doing something about it? So just picture this scene for a second. The strategy team rolls out these beautiful, super detailed scenarios. You know, the optimistic case, the baseline, the big scary downside. Everybody in the room nods, they ask some smart questions, the slide deck gets filed away. And then, crickets. Nothing. And when reality starts to look a lot like one of those scenarios, everyone acts like it's a total surprise. Why? Why does this keep happening over and over again? Well, our first instinct, almost always, is to blame the forecast. We tell ourselves, oh, we just didn't predict it accurately enough. But you know what? That's not the real problem. The failure isn't in our imagination. It's in our organization's ability to act on that imagination. It's not a forecasting failure. It's an infrastructure failure. And this leads to a really dangerous trap that honestly, most organizations fall right into. It's this trap called the illusion of preparedness. It's this mistaken belief that just because you went through the motions, just because you did the scenario planning exercise, you're somehow ready for anything. And here's the core of that illusion, right? It's kind of like having a fire escape plan taped to the wall. That doesn't mean you're actually safe from a fire. It just means you have a piece of paper. Until you've practiced the drill, made sure the doors are unlocked, and cleared the hallways, that plan is just that, paper. The analysis might exist somewhere, but the actual capacity to act on it, it's just not there. And this slide just illustrates that core tension perfectly. On one hand, you have foresight. That's what we think might happen. On the other hand, you have infrastructure. That's what we're actually enabled to do about it. The problem is, most companies are absolutely swimming in foresight, and they are dangerously starved of infrastructure.
So this illusion of preparedness, it isn't some random thing. It's actually caused by 3 specific recurring patterns of failure that just paralyze organizations. Let's break them down one by one.
So these 3 patterns are pretty sneaky. We're going to look at how we build scenarios for the wrong purpose in the first place, how the power structures in our companies get in the way, and why treating this whole planning thing as a one-and-done event absolutely guarantees it's going to fail.
Okay, let's start with pattern number 1. Most scenario planning kicks off with this really big, kind of open-ended, almost philosophical question. And look, it's a great way to stretch your thinking, to have interesting conversations, but the analysis it produces is, well, it's inert. It's a thought experiment, not a decision-making tool. Now, effective planning, it flips the whole script. It starts with a very concrete, high-stakes decision that you have to make right now. What capital are you about to commit? What big partnership are you going to sign? You got to ask yourself, what move is really hard to undo? Then, the scenarios become these powerful tools to stress test that live choice, not just some abstract paintings of a possible future. All right, now for failure pattern number 2, and this is where a great idea runs smack into organizational reality. You've got the insight, you know what needs to happen, but then bam, you get hit with these brutal real-world questions. Who actually has the authority to pull the trigger on this? Is there any money for it, or is the budget locked down for the next year? What happens to my career if I act early and I'm wrong? And what's the political fallout if I mess this up? All of a sudden, doing nothing feels like the safest choice.
So let's be crystal clear here. This is not an analytical failure. You don't fix this problem by making better-looking charts. This is a governance failure. The real problem is buried deep in your company's power structures, your budget processes, and your performance reviews.
And the third pattern? It's simply about time. So the scenarios are born during the annual planning cycle. But then you fast forward 6 months, and those critical assumptions have just kind of faded into background noise. And by the time a year's gone by, the world has moved on so completely, the original scenarios are basically ancient history.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem pretty thoroughly. Now, the real question, how do we fix it? Well, the solution lies in building that missing piece, the organizational infrastructure.
And this is the absolute key takeaway. The problem isn't a lack of intelligence. Your organization is filled with incredibly smart people. The problem is a lack of that connective tissue, the infrastructure that actually links all that intelligence to real action. This table really shows the fundamental shift we have to make. It's all about moving from creating static artifacts, reports and slide decks that just sit on a shelf, to building a dynamic operating system for your strategy. So instead of a bunch of siloed reports, you get integrated signals telling you what's happening right now. Instead of insights that have no power, you get governance that can actually make a call. And instead of dusty old slide decks, you get tools that are used in decisions every single day.
So how can you tell if your organization actually has this kind of infrastructure? Let's run a quick litmus test. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself about the answers.
First off, which scenarios are you actually monitoring with real live data? Are they living documents, or are they just collecting digital dust somewhere?
Next question. When a key assumption that you made turns out to be wrong, who has the authority to change course? Is it one person's clear call, or does it set off a huge political scramble?
And when that happens, do you have pre-approved actions ready to go, or does every single response have to go all the way back through the budget gauntlet from square one? Think about the likelihoods you assigned to each scenario. When was the last time those probabilities were formally updated with new information? Last week? Last quarter? Last year? And finally, here's the ultimate test. Can you name a single major strategic decision your organization made in the last 6 months where the scenarios were explicitly used to frame the debate and make the final call?
Now, if you struggle to answer those questions, trust me, you are not alone. But that silence, it doesn't mean your team isn't smart. It's a clear, flashing red light signal that you have an infrastructure gap.
In today's world of just constant disruption, the ability to adapt isn't just a nice-to-have skill anymore. It is the core infrastructure. It's what separates the organizations that merely plan from the ones that actually thrive. It's time to stop just forecasting, and it's time to start building.